This is a cube. This is a dungeon map. Now what if these two did a fusion dance and we made that into a video game? Well, first, let's figure out how this is gonna work. Now this is the layout of our map. And if you've ever textured a 3D cube or maybe done one of those paper crafts of a cube, you'll probably see where we're going with this. See, since each room in this dungeon is a square, we're going to wrap the dungeon around the cube. With each face consisting of one of these rooms. But before we could get to do that, we needed a game and an actual dungeon to wrap with. So using my Doodle to Dungeon generation code, our player actually starts in the furthest most left room. Then random rooms are picked for an exit and a lootable chest, which are given specific room design so, nothing can accidentally break. The remaining rooms are then given a random layout. And you see those red squares? Those are where the bad guys can spawn. Now the player controls this little knight in typical top-down action fashion. They can swing their sword with left click, or hold right click and fire their bow instead. And while they can swing to their heart's content all day, arrows are actually limited to a maximum of 5 with cooldowns before their ammo replenishes. Now the enemies come in two variations, melee and ranged. Melee goblins will chase down the player and try to stab them with their spears. And the ranged goblins will attempt to do similar but obviously further away with their bow. Now as you may have noticed in the HUD, the player also has slots for potions. As long as they've got them, potions are automatically used when the player takes damage, and they can be found in those lootable chests mentioned earlier. Each contains like 1 to 3 potions per chest. And speaking of which, those exits, they are actually locked at the start of each level. Now in order to unlock the exit, the player must defeat the enemy holding the key to the exit. Now which enemy is holding the key? Well, there's only one way to figure that out. Now once the key has been obtained, which will light up the key icon in the HUD box, the player can exit the dungeon and move on to the next level to do it all over again with a newly generated dungeon. Okay, so that's our dungeon crawler game. It's not the deepest of games simply because I wasn't even sure that this next part was going to even be possible. But with the dungeon bit done, it's time to apply it to a 3D cube. And this is basically the culmination of years of random projects coming together to pull off one fancy effect. So to start, our dungeon as a whole is literally cut up into 6 different views. And this is actually using the same technique used in a holiday special from a couple years ago. Then, using the techniques from the recent 3D dungeon crawler Dark Souls video, each of those views is then assigned to a cube face. That cube is then tied to the player's position in the dungeon and rotates to match whatever room the player is in. It kind of works like how the camera in games like The Binding of Isaac works, only instead of, just locking the camera to a room, we're also locking it to a cube face. And I'm sure some of you may doubt that this is an actual 3D cube. Now I'm gonna have to flip the footage for this because 3D is weird like that. But here's the game with the cube position tied to the mouse cursor instead of the player. In fact, this is kind of how I originally wanted the game to play, with the cube slowly rotating as the player moved throughout the dungeon. The problem is actually playing the game like this gets really confusing really quickly, and no amount of tweaking could really deal with the headache that it brought with it, though I'm not sure if maybe I'm just overlooking something more obvious? I don't know. Can you think of any way that we could make this version work? But yeah, that was a project. And fun fact, this was actually something that I've wanted to try making a reality for like a really long time now, but never thought it would happen. But finally, after like years of working on different ideas, I was actually able to pull some version of it off, which I think is a great testament to the importance of practice. And there's definitely more that I'd like to have added or maybe changed, but that could always be done in a future project. So hey, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for future videos, and also consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video. Speaking of which, if you enjoy what I do here and would like to support the channel further, I am on Patreon. But with that said, this has been Dev Diary, the series where I try to make my own video games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.